I noticed something. You refer to these people as survivors, and previously also in another phase of discussion, you were talking about survivors, and you were not using the word victim. I've heard various narratives about how using the label victim is not empowering, and how survivor is a better label to call people by. What are your thoughts on that?
I I mean, maybe based on the fact that I don't know how I have worked with thousands of people by now, individually and then as communities. So I don't think almost instinctively it comes up. Like I don't think I see them as victims. It is not natural to me to see them as victims, because the more you talk with people who have gone through these experiences, you recognize how mature, how skilled, how capable people are. It never stops to amaze you. I mean, I'll tell you one example. I remember during tsunami, I was sort of again with a group of friends. I was going to these villages, and there was this man. I mean, he had lost a lot. He had lost his family, lost his house. He was just a lone survivor in that sense. But and there was flooding. I mean, still the water was coming, and there was a lot of floods. And he had found this table that was again floating in the water, and then he had sort of secured the table, and he was collecting photographs that were floating on the water. He had no idea who these photographs belongs to, but when you talk to him, what he told me was that, well, at one point, someday, these will be the only remains of people to some people, and I know they are going to be valuable, so I'm going to save them. I mean, if you think about it, right, that's extraordinary for him to think like that in the midst of losing everything. So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, the more you work with people who have gone through these unbelievably difficult experiences, you recognize that that is something that is added into their lives. Clinically and in the scholarly literature, probably you have heard of this post-traumatic growth. There is this concept that when people go through these experiences, actually you grow. There are things that are added to you. I mean, it's a huge cost to pay, of course, to get this growth, and yet not to deny it, not to dismiss it, and just to see them as victims, which to me is very disrespectful. So I would, of course, go with the word survivor.
Thank you. It just reminds me of an article I read a couple of months back, yeah, where this victim or survivor, maybe I should call her survivor, of rape. She was raped in her university, and she had written this long article about how people were encouraging herself to refer to herself as a survivor and not as a victim, because survivor is more empowering and victim is disempowering, and survivor was a better word to use to refer herself to. And she had written this response to that pressure, if I may. And she had spoken about how she considers herself a victim of the acts of this rapist, and she will continue to be so. And she does not think of the word victim as something that makes her weak or as something that is disempowering. She is like embracing that label, and she wants to be a victim, like fully. So that was an interesting article I read on the topic. But I think the victims or the survivors or the people who have gone through these issues should perhaps tell us what they want us to call them, maybe. And when we're not at a juncture where we can know that, maybe it's better to call them survivor rather than victim, because not everyone will think like this lady as well, right?
I totally agree with you, Amina. If the person himself or herself choose to be called as a victim or a survivor, I would definitely respect that. That's their right. You know, they choose what they want to call themselves. Having said that, from a more clinical perspective, um, empowerment is not necessarily something that we can give anybody, right? Empowerment is something that people need to sort of build within. If I feel as, again, purely clinically speaking, if I feel as if the label of victim is somehow sort of blocking that growth, blocking the sort of growth of agency and empowerment, I would challenge it, in a quite empathetic way, of course, not directly. So that would be the only place where I would sort of work with this labeling of victim versus survivor. Other than that, definitely, if people want to identify themselves as victims, I would definitely respect that. That's not my place to challenge.